Good afternoon and welcome to Poets Time. My name's Linda Jackson, and I think it's difficult just now for all of us to get out and about and, show the work. And I'm in a fortunate position that I hear lots of brilliant writing from people that I work with, and I learn a lot from them, that's for sure. So I just want to give you a chance out there to hear some of this and give a wee showcase space online for people to get their work across. And today, the poet I have with me is a lovely guy called Robert Nesbitt, whom I've only met in the past year, and his poetry has been such a joy. Robert comes from the East End of Glasgow and described himself as getting the bus from Oglenoble Shifty or whatever across London Road to the madness of Goldbergs and all of that. So I could kind of take a lot of that on. I get that background quite a bit. But anyway, Robert's just quite an eclectic writer, I must say, and there's an awful lot of humour here and there lurking in the back of his work, but he pushes a punch, I have to say. With very emotive poetry as well. And his first one he's going to do for us. Welcome, Robert.
Thank you. It's lovely to be here. Thanks for inviting me along.
It's a joy. His first poem he's going to do today is called Accented Cushions.
Accented cushions. I can say large sofas are for hiding behind. I'd go there when horror films played on TV, when shadows grew long fingers, reaching out with menacing blood-shot eyes and fangs, both puncture. But mostly, when told, shh, go now, before screams came covering walls, she'd beg. I didn't cry for monsters inside. She taught me, stay quiet, stay small. I didn't always. Accented Cushions for me was very much about the situation that people found themselves in during this particular time, and recognising often that situations can bring out dire consequences and dire circumstances for people. And it really struck me that just some of the lives that people are living indoors. And I read an article and that really struck me, and I wanted to write about it. But I was also very much struck by nature and just being so caught in nature right now and what nature meant. And there was a part of me thinking about the way that nature can be two sides. And I wrote Awakening, and I'm going to share with you now. Awakening. At first, there is a calmness in the night's air. Before its breath tightens the skin around your face, its mood heard in the chirring of insects, the solitary caw, the scurry of claws, or the howl imagined in these curbed surroundings. For the woodland trees are gathering, circling, tilting knotted heads and moonlit silhouetted husks staring, as though prepared to strike, drawn by the beat of a restless heart. And between their limbs the rain comes, leaving wet beads on shivering skin, turning to miniature streams. But then, in the shallows of the morning, the aroma of deep moss, pine, peat, of honeysuckle, the citrus scents of bog myrtle, of ling and bell heather, of sundews and butterwort, all flavouring the light that stretches, warming flesh and falling leaf, twig, and the bark-laden ground.
So the first part of that was another Outer Limits. It sounded like another horror story. The first part of that nature poem, it sounded quite frightening. I think you can't go in nature at night time, Robert.
Well, yeah, it was, and it's that kind of way that I was so struck how nature can have that effect on us. Mm-hmm. That nature can actually feel really quite terrifying at times. You know, those sounds that are very natural at night in many ways, but actually there was a bit of me that was kind of like take myself back to when I was a kid, and those kind of that imagination. And I think part of that's because as I got older, I'm so aware of those kind of take me back to those places, and Awakenings at that beginning is that the way that our minds can run away with us. and take us to particular places.
Yeah, I've got worse when I can't run as fast. I used to run for the school. I can't run now as well. So, and I'm not a fighter. So I've got now, I can be terrified day or night. If I go, I like going walking, and I end up places. Used to travel a lot and going abroad for a month around Ireland or a month around Canada, or do things like that. But now, or latterly, even then a little bit, I find myself, if the grass is very high, or else I'm going to a kind of forest bit, and I realise there's not a lot of light coming in. You know, I do feel the shiver in my timbers. I'm just like, I'm out of here, you know. And now I'll actually say to my sons or my daughter or pals, I want to go round Pollock Park, and I want to go a real walk in Pollock Park, will you come? And it's just that, because I don't know, I don't think I've become more timid. I think I'm less prepared, you know, and when you're in these places now, I do think the noises and the sounds, places you love if you're with someone else. I spent the whole day yesterday showing Pollock Park off, and if I'd been at those places, some of them, I would have been afraid, you know, I would have been afraid being there. Is that your dog? What's his name?
This is Bailey, who obviously has just saw the cat and ran in and is now barking here. So this is one of the realities of being on Zoom, and you live in a house where that happens, and you get a dog that just decides at those moments is a lovely peaceful thing. So that in many ways is a complete example of awakening, where you go from this darkness to all of a sudden, or quietness, to suddenly you've got the reality of a barking dog.
Like, I know, and I think actually that's what we're all finding on Zoom, because we're trying our best to make things but that's part of it. And I think I've had lots of experiences, and one of the things I was saying was writing this second part of this memoir, The Siren, sitting there writing it, and I live just beside the Victoria Infirmary. So, you know, right in the middle of that COVID, there was up to eight, once there was 8 sirens went off in about an hour and a half, just with people. That was a hub. And it was just such a kind of, not only is there noise happening when you're trying to work, the kind of noise that's happening when you're trying to work is because of the fact you're in this environment, sitting in Zoom and all that. It was very, very strange and quite frightening, to be honest.
It really is, and I must admit, I've found the whole, from a creative point of view and starting to write, it has really taken me back to particular places, or it's really brought out those kind of things, as I say, as I got older, and what that represents. And even in Awakening, one of the things that I wanted to really try and do was take you to that place that does feel at the beginning that it's frightening. And for many people during this time, it has been fairly frightening. No. And not knowing what's going to be there, but it's also reminding us in those kind of last stanza that it's about reminding that actually, wait a minute here, there's some beautiful stuff that's going on. And I was walking the dog that you heard. I was walking him recently, and the grass hadn't been cut for ages, and you had these ferns growing up, and because for some reason the trees just looked so much more laden, you've got the trees leaning down and the grass that's there touching it as if it's such a natural thing, all right? And I was just looking at it, I was just thinking, look at that embrace that's happening there. And that's wonderful. And just the other day, I was back in and they'd cut all the grass, and it felt, whilst it was all lovely and there was no long grass there and that, there was something actually quite sad for me, but that connection between the trees and the grass is kind of lost. So I think during this time, we need to remind ourselves just there are some beautiful things out there. Yeah. You know,
that embrace you talked about, that's a poet's imagination coming out there, the embrace between the trees and the grass. I loved it. But yeah, while it's just everything becomes so uniform again, you know, I mean, that these verges that are growing poppies and all sorts of, it's like the marker of Barra all along the side of the streets. I love it. Yeah. And that'd be a bit when that poem, when you just change to the morning, but wait, and it's set up beautifully there the way you read it, but wait, what's this? And the change, you know, and it is like that. I mean, I think mostly whether sometimes, I think for some people as well, given, I know that you work in mental health work, and I think for a lot of people, most of us, there's anxiety running, but for people where that is something they have to deal with regularly, probably every change at the moment could afford ill health to them, you know what I mean, just because it's not the way it was and everything's different. So I'm glad that things are changing and we're starting to get back to a wee bit of, and hopefully that'll last. Hopefully that'll last as long as, I think it's down to people themselves just to make sure that they play the game, you know.
It is. We have to, you know, we have to look at what we're doing, and we need to be sensible. Absolutely. And there's a real opportunity here for us, and for me during this time, being able to write poetry and actually be in a class and hear other people and see what we're doing and connecting in that kind of way has been so powerful for me and so important. And you know, and I'm hugely grateful for that. I'm hugely grateful to be able to see other people's talent and what that represents and what an experience that they're going through and being able to share that. But actually what's really important for us is to see how people actually reconnect, and we have to reconnect after this. And there are ways that we can do it, and we can see, you know, I joked the other day that actually I'm just grateful because I'm looking forward to seeing people where actually realise they've got legs and not just heads and shoulders. And that's so important for us.
The only thing is I'll have to get my jammies, and that's a wee bit of a, you know, I get the makeup and the wee bit of jewellery, and you know, I'm like Lipton's off and below, and I don't know how I'm going to manage when I'm having to look out my jeans or something else to wear again going out. But anyway, Robert, the poetry's great, and I'm looking forward to seeing it in print, and that'll be happening for sure in the next couple of years. So I can't wait to see your work, and everybody else gets a chance to see it as well. So,
well, you know, and I genuinely mean this, but actually, it's been the opportunity to actually to be part of the class, and actually your encouragement and the way that you get us to think, and the way that you actually encourage that kind of thinking, and the way that you've helped us to look at form and stuff like that, it makes a huge difference, and people shouldn't underestimate that. So, you know, it's actually a thank you to you as well.
Thank you very much, Robert. I'll take that on and make sure I get a look back ready for you for the next one.
I look forward to it.
Anyway,
Thank you so
lovely
much.
to talk to you, and we'll get out for a pint soon. Thanks very much.
Absolutely, I'll look forward to it.
Thanks very much, folks, for joining Robert and I today, and we'll see you next time for Poets Time.